In this video, we're going to see how quickly I can do a full valve adjustment on an inline 6 diesel C7 Cat. So here's our patient or victim, whatever you want to call it, and it's a C7 I'm putting together from a short block and a complete head. So front and rear structures, overhead, all that. Resealed injectors, and we're going to time it, and I want to see how long it takes. Now this one is prepped and ready to do the overhead, so all the prep time is not going to count. So it's pinned. We're pinned on TDC 1. I've got the front mark that's a damper, but it's not installed. And we've got our feeler gauges, 15 thousandths, 25 thousandths, and our torque wrench is already set. You might notice I don't have any wrenches here. That's because I don't use wrenches when I'm doing an overhead, just T-handle torque wrench and a torque adapter. 22 foot-pounds as per specifications. So let's see how fast I can do it. Now, if you want to get this done by me, you need to call this number. 1-800 Western States 15-minute valve adjustment, or it's full price. Better start dialing. Obviously, that's a joke, folks. Let's go! So we're going here. Now, the idea to do this actually came because about a year and a half ago, I saw how quickly I could do a Huey pump. I didn't do a video on it, but it was on a Freightliner truck, I believe, and I did it in 30 minutes. Obviously, that's pretty good. Now, the procedure I'm doing here is from this video, the no wrenches, how to do a nearly perfect valve adjustment. And the procedure I use is one that I came up with, but I'm sure other people have. I'm not claiming that I am the originator of it. So what I do is no wrenches. What I do is I set the torque wrench to the spec it's supposed to be, which is 22 foot-pounds. I take my adjuster, which is a T-handle here, and I run it down, and then I go a full turn pass. That'll squish out any oil between the valve, between the lifter, the push rod. Then I back it off till it's loose. Then I go finger tight, and then I torque it. It makes more sense in the other video. We can see what I'm doing more clearly. This is more of just a speed run here. And you can see my time there on the left. We're at 1 minute mark. And you might notice I'm not looking at a sheet or anything. Pretty much all the Cat inlines, if you basically follow this, which is intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, that'll tell you your sequence. So we're on TDC 1, so I did intake and exhaust on 1. I'm now doing intake on 2. Then I'm going to do exhaust 3, intake 4, exhaust 5. So that's where the intake, exhaust 1, intake 2, exhaust 3, intake 4, exhaust 5. That's what that little, I don't know what you'd call it, a rhyme. And then when you're on 6, you do it the opposite. So it's still the intake, exhaust, but you start on 6. So intake, exhaust 6, 5 is intake, exhaust 4, intake 3, exhaust 2. You can see I'm doing that same procedure. You can see the old short block behind me there. What was wrong with it? Not sure, folks. I didn't see anything wrong with it, but apparently it had high blow-by. So they decided to replace the short block. I didn't see any damage to the cylinders, but it did have high blow-by. I didn't troubleshoot it, so we're just going off that. I believe it's under warranty. It's a Cat long block. The head did test bad, though, so who knows. I just put them together sometimes, folks. Now, you might notice my voice sounds not as good as usual. I feel fine, but my voice has kind of left me the last few days. It was actually way worse the last 2 days, so I'm kind of hopeful that it's getting better now to where I can actually talk. I was trying to talk Friday at work, and no one could hear me. It was depressing. But we're almost done here with number 5, exhaust. And C7s are kind of unusual. The intake are short rocker arms with a bridge, and the exhausts are the longer ones with a single valve. So the intakes have 2, the exhausts have 1 valve. Now, I was hoping to do under 10 minutes, and we're at the 3-minute mark, and we're halfway done. So we are destroying that time. This week's destruction of the week comes from Zach. Thank you, Zach. And he had some very good pictures of a Cummins 15-liter. These are the, I guess you'd call them plungers out of the fuel pump. Not looking too good. You want to know what the fuel pump cam look like. Don't have to wait much longer. This is look at the cam lobe on the fuel pump. That's pretty bad. So yeah, that came apart, but also it sent metal through that entire engine for a while because look at those main bearings. This engine was only 4 months old, so even though it's a Cummins, that's a real tragedy, folks, that it would be in this bad a condition after only 4 months, but you start getting metal in your system, it is not a good deal, folks. That's why you should probably be doing oil sampling. So let's get back to our speed run here, if you want to call it that. So we need to rotate the engine 360 degrees because we need to do the other side of the valves. Now C7s are, in my opinion, the easiest engine to do valve adjustments on. The injectors have no adjustment. There's no VVAs. There's no Jake brakes. It's literally just intake and exhaust valves. And they're easy to get to. I also don't have the valve cover spacer on, so this is about as ideal as you can get, folks. So, like I said before, we're going to be going now starting from 6, doing the intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust technique. So we're doing intake on 6. And I kind of fumble it here. I didn't miss any of the steps, but I should have been more prepared with all my stuff. And you can see that little cart that my computer is timing me on. I usually put tools on that when doing an overhead to kind of have right next to me. But since I was using it for my computer, that probably could have saved some time. If I could have shaved a few seconds off this watching it in hindsight, there's a few things I could have done differently. Like just having my paint pen ready. I didn't have that ready. That would have saved a little bit of time. But by the end, I did it pretty quick, you'll see. And I did go back through because this was as fast as I could basically do it without like skipping steps, like torquing stuff or over torquing it. So, and just checking, I rotated the engine around, just made sure all the bridges were in place, all the push rods were in place, because even though this was kind of a test of how fast I could do it, I don't want to seem like or lack any quality on the work that I do. Now, you might be wondering, why don't I... Notice at no point do I pull the feeler gauge to see what a light drag is. I explained it more in that video where I'm talking about a nearly perfect valve adjustment. But a light drag is extremely subjective to every person. And we're at the 5-minute mark now, and we're about 3/4 of the way done. But what I do by just going finger tight is that's more uniform in my opinion than a light drag. And it's a lot faster because a light drag can drive you nuts. I know I used to hate doing overheads until I started doing it this way. And we are getting close. So we are on exhaust number 4 here. So we only have, after this one, 2 more to go. And we're just over 5 minutes. Like I said, originally I was like, I wonder if I could do it under 15. And I was pretty sure I could. And then my goal was under 10. So definitely got that done. If you guys do overheads, if you guys build engines like this, why don't you give it a try? Or maybe you know someone that's tried this. And don't tell me, oh, this guy I used to work with, he would just tighten them by hand and do it in 10 seconds. You know, he'd do it by hearing it or something. That is not the same, folks. You need to follow the actual procedure and torque them. Another way you could do it faster would be just use a wrench and over torque them and then run a torque wrench over after. But that is not the correct procedure. Now, if I get any comments saying that using a torque adapter from a torque wrench is altering the torque, I'm going to be pretty upset because you obviously don't know how torque adapters work. Do you know who you're dealing with? Torque adapters only apply more or less torque when they are leveraging against the drive head of a torque wrench. If that torque adapter was extended past the head, kind of like straight, that would modify the torque. However, if it's on a horizontal plane with the head, it does not modify the torque. And you'll notice my torque adapter is at a 90-degree angle from the head, so the torque is not being multiplied or reduced by running it that way. I've done tests, and it is true. So what do we get? 6:48. I'd call that pretty good. 6 minutes and 48 seconds for a full overhead. And I will leave you with this. Thanks for watching.
Your injectors are crooked.
See how fast I can do an overhead on a C7.